Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead, agricultural meteorologist. Greg Soulje is with us here today. Welcome, Greg.
Hello there, Sarah. Yeah, on the road, but nice to be with you here today as we continue the proverbial roller coaster ride of weather and especially temperatures across the heartland, the plains, and the Corn Belt locales. One day you're in the, as Earl Finkel used to say, the Bermuda shorts on. The next day you got the parka and everything else you can layer upon, and that's just the way it goes for now. But we do see a pattern shift getting going around the plains and Corn Belt locales, especially next week.
All right. Well, let's talk about that. Your slides are up. Take it away.
All righty, we shall. And here we go on some of the headlines across the Corn Belt this morning. Still some cold air, upper 20s as far south as parts of the Ohio Valley, northern Ohio Valley. There's even a more substantial shot of cold air. And that's even a little bit colder than you'd like to see into the beginning part of April over the course of the weekend, at least approaching the beginning part of April. So just so it goes, these fluctuations in temperatures, it's a typical early spring setup. Matter of fact, 70 to 80-degree warmth across Nebraska for the day-to-day. They are temporarily out of the increased fire risk, but that will be increasing in the days to come. And outside of, again, some snow showers over the northern Great Lakes region in the northeast of New England, pretty quiet days worth of weather underway across much of the Corn Belt. Meanwhile, it's dry weather and a return to above average temperatures across the plain states and on through the plains, 70 up through Big Sky Country, 90 in the central and southern plain states areas. There are some signs, and I think the winter wheat markets have begun to adjust themselves accordingly for a little better. And it's a start. It's a process. Like I've said before, a professor in school, we're not chasing blue and red ping pong balls in the atmosphere. It takes a process to get these pattern shifts going underway, but we do see something more positive from a moisture gain standpoint and a drought easing setup. Maybe I don't want to go any farther than that through the plains. So there's two issues at hand over the winter wheat fields. Stress because of dryness and drought. That's beginning to teleconnect from Nebraska past Kansas in through Oklahoma and Texas. And of course, we had a pretty good cold snap or two over the past 4 to 6 weeks in bare ground exposed winter wheat fields that were just maybe beginning to break dormancy. I'm sure they're out of dormancy right now. So some assessment going on in through the plain states areas. Temperatures recovering quickly across areas from the Delta on westwards. It's a little cool for the time of year in the Tennessee Valley and Mid-Atlantic region. All ahead forward on spring field work over the southern states. Again, dryness, drought, Delta, southeastern part of the country, Cotton Belt country. And of course, we've had some cool weather concerns, and there may be another frost potential for the Tennessee Valley and maybe the north end of the Cotton Belt to east of the Mississippi at some point late in the weekend or early next week. And then that should be the end of that stuff going on. But again, a little bit late in the season to be tracking that kind of stuff in through the southeastern part of the country. Through the western states, there's been some welcome news with some rain shower activity in the Willamette Valley and Pacific Northwest, Rogue River Basin as well. Temperatures are down from the record-setting levels in the west and southwest, but still desert to southwestern reaches will be up around 100 degrees. We're going to kind of translate that hot ridge across the central and western Gulf Coast, build it into the southeastern states. Not as strong, but usually when you shift to warmth and heat over the southern and eastern parts of the country, you tend to cool it off across the west, and that slings the upper level winds in from the southwest. Not an impressive upper air setup to start, but again, a process that will get underway. So a little more showery weather picture will move from the western states into the plain states going forward. Big issue still continues to be, and I still think we have a big fire season on hand for the west and an early one, and parts of the plains too. We've seen that already. Nebraska, for example. I think once we get the thunderstorm activity, the rainy season going initially into Florida, lightning and all that with a very extreme drought pattern could get some issues going on there. But as of March 1st, those snowpack levels are less than 50%. The water equivalency, if you were to take that snow column and melt it down, is maybe 30% at best. So we don't have a lot to work with at least building up reservoirs and water tables off the runoff in the western states. There's the visible satellite picture from this morning. Some high and mid-level clouds over the southeastern part of the country. No big deal. You can see the developing system out across the northern plains and far western Corn Belt. A couple of sprinkles there and the snow showers into the northern Great Lakes region. And the next stream of moisture, the eastern flank of that atmospheric river, where a guy with the initials of Mike Pearson might have been out there enjoying some R&R, and I believe we'll hear stories about too much clouds and too much rain out there. There's the upper level wind profile that is in from the west and northwest. The ridge still over the southwestern part of the country. So that's usually a pretty mild, pretty quiet setup as it applies to the plains, and to a lesser degree over the eastern Corn Belt, northeastern New England, as we continue to tap in to some cool air. There's still a lot of snow on the ground, and we'll take a look at that through the northern lakes, and especially over areas from the St. Lawrence River Valley on northward, and high pressure centered across the eastern Corn Belt. That clockwise flow around the high, bringing in increasing southeast winds, and not a lot of moisture. The Gulf moisture is kind of trapped off and track at the pass across the Gulf Coast and the Gulf of Mexico. So just eking out a couple of sprinkles. All this will change here over the second half of the week as we move into another briefly active weather pattern, not necessarily moisture laden, and we still got some severe weather issues to talk about between Thursday and Friday. There are the weather maps and charts. Again, the only real radar detectable stuff is into the northern Great Lakes region. Pretty quiet, really, from the divide on eastward. A few rain showers into coastal sections and areas about Old Washington State, west of the Cascades, where the shower activity continues on this afternoon. A little bit of a weak cool front making its way through the upper Great Lakes region. A couple of showers down there from about Ocala northward up towards St. Augustine and Jacksonville. Little change in through tomorrow morning, and the shower activity continues on there, and as well as the Pacific Northwest. So some additional wet weather there. Fairly high snow levels, and so primarily rain into northern Idaho, Montana, and still some showers trying to extend as far south as northern California. And that easterly wind at this time of the year usually brings in late night, early morning shower activity from the Space Coast on northward. That will apply to northern and central Florida tomorrow afternoon into the evening. And you can see the developing warm front there, those red hatched lines out of Missouri into the central Gulf Coast area, and maybe a couple of sprinkles breaking out into the parts of the Corn Belt, maybe even an isolated shower or thunderstorm, but otherwise most of the action up near the Canadian border, northern Rockies and Pacific Northwest. But you do see a little more action now by Thursday afternoon and evening, developing across the northern lakes, northern plains into the northern Rockies. That's another wedge of late season Arctic air. So heads up livestock managers, been in barn operators, a little bit of rain, a little sleet, back into snow, and another big temperature drop of some 20 to 30 degrees out of the Dakota's Big Sky Country to start, at least over the course of Wednesday afternoon and evening. A couple of showers into the Ohio Valley. That is the severe weather potential over Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio again. That is a slight risk area for, let's see, this would be Thursday afternoon and evening time. Had a couple of the stronger storms in the latest cold front that came on through late last week out of those same areas. So not anything substantial, big time. Another quarter to half, and maybe some spots half to 1 inch in the rainfall department. Still looking at some spots that are double-digit totals, even in the recent rains over parts of the central and eastern Corn Belt since January of 2025. That's tomorrow's fire risk in through Wyoming, Montana, Nebraska, et cetera, so forth and so on. Get used to that going forward here in the days to come. Next 24 hours, a little overdone through the Midwest. Just a few sprinkles, maybe an isolated shower. Most of the organized moisture, again, eastern and east central Florida, Pacific Northwest, and that will be rain and shift over to snow up towards the Sioux, the St. Lawrence River Valley, and points on northward. That's the snow cover. What's left of it as of this morning, generally Lambeau up to the Arrowhead of Minnesota, across the Superior and the Sioux and east from there. And some of those totals are still pushing more than a foot. Snowmelt beginning to get underway to the eastern and lower Great Lakes region, as in Toronto, Buffalo, and points to the east from there. Next to 5 days of the upper air charts, pretty quiet setup. You can see the hot high, if you will, over the Rio Grande of Texas, holding there. It'll move through the Gulf Coast areas. We get a little troughiness to move into the Pacific West and Northwest. And that warm ridge will take shape and take hold of the central and eastern Gulf Coast down through Florida by Monday to Tuesday. And you can see upper level winds trying with time to become more southwesterly. It's not a real strong flow. It's little disturbances that'll maybe generate a couple of showery episodes. Nothing widespread, nothing guaranteed, nothing big in the gauge. But again, a start to a wetter pattern as we move to and approach the first, at least the opening of the month of April. So again, a process, and there are the maps and charts for on the surface through early next week. And you can see there's a big, first of all, a strong front coming through West Texas down into the Ohio Valley and heading south and east and southeast, where that cold front will make its way all the way down past the Gulf Coast. And that will mean two things: pretty hard freeze expected over the central Corn Belt, as in upper teens to mid 20s out of parts of Nebraska, Iowa, northern and central Illinois, Indiana, and the western Great Lakes region. A return of maybe a little lake effect snow into parts of Michigan, a northeast wind, and there may be perhaps even a few snowflakes on the backside of that cold front between late Friday and early Saturday as far south as the Central Plains and into the central Corn Belt. But otherwise, just a cold Saturday, not so cold Sunday, but frost and freeze concerns. Northernmost Delta, mid-south, south of the Ohio into the southern mid-Atlantic region, maybe clipping the north end of Cotton Belt country, let's say roughly Interstate 10 and northward from there. And then Monday to Tuesday, you can see a system coming out into the plains, south winds return, and with that southwest to northeast upper level wind flow, low level winds from around the south. Now things begin to line up for a little more prolonged, not necessarily hot, but milder to warmer. And with time, we'll get these humidities, these dew points to climb back north of 50 or 55, which is a better environment to get some shower activity going, not necessarily thunderstorms or severe weather, but again, a process to get things lined up where we need to be. Remember now, those grounds are dry or drought ridden. You don't get a lot of evaporation or evapotranspiration back into the atmosphere. So it takes a little while in these drought ridden areas to get a substantial, significant pattern shift to stick. So hang in there. It will happen into April and May. Once again, if you're on the earlier side of planting in the Corn Belt, you may be disappointed. If you're on the more traditional side, let's say May to early June, some delays, but we'll begin to get some improvement going forward as we get deeper on into the springtime season. And again, growing concern in our mindset that we've got some issues going forward with strengthening El Nino weather pattern. We'll skip past this first segment here, but the warmth is building through the western states on the extended outlook here. Temperatures heading maybe up to the 90-degree mark ahead of that cold front. So these temperature swings of 30, 40, 50 degrees, I'm sure it's not great with livestock operations in mind, nor storage of grain and etc. So keep an eye on those temperature and humidity levels. Again, freezes all the way down in the northwestern to northern half of the Plain States areas going forward here in the next several days. Freezes again into the Plain States. As mentioned, significant precip will be really scarce except for the Pacific Northwest and from the Ohio Valley on southward as we move through the next couple of days. There's the wind potential and fire potential all across the divide and east. On the 26th, that would put us into Thursday. Severe weather over parts of the Midwest, and some of those rains into late Thursday and Friday will mushroom out, and they may be a little more beneficial. Where we've already had rain, upwards of 6+ inches the past maybe 3 or 4 weeks into some of those wetter now areas, I-70 on southward of the Buckeye State. And there's the next 7 days focused in eastern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, right at maybe the apex of where still the more substantial extreme drought conditions are going. So that's the best rain setup, 1/2 to 1, maybe some spots 1.5 inches. Again, we nibble away. Don't think we're going to make any significant inroads. I think the folks at the Drought Mitigation Center, the National Weather Service, may be a little too rambunctious in getting an alleviation or a substantially improved drought weather pattern or drought setup to move out of the central Corn Belt locales. There's the drought monitor from Thursday. Again, some improvement has been noted, especially southern Indiana and Ohio, eastern through southern Great Lakes region. We may get to a point where we're perhaps just slightly dry to a moderate drought setup over parts of the Corn Belt. But again, I think we've got some issues going forward mid to late summertime with El Nino maybe getting a little stronger than people may be thinking right now. At least that's our estimate here. At our setup and operation. There's the Midwestern look at the drought as of late last week. Temperatures, that's the highs for tomorrow, heading towards the low 90s into the Plain States, close to 90 into the western and southwestern Corn Belt. Note the cooler air up near the Canadian border. And by the time we get to Friday, we're stuck back down into the 30s and 40s over much of the Corn Belt, 50s at the Ohio, and a swing of some 30 to 40 degrees back to highs into the upper 40s and 50s across the Great Plains. Even the deep south and southeast will be cooling on off when we see these temperatures by the time we get to Friday down into the single digits and teens over the northern and western parts of the Great Lakes areas. Will be down at least, these may be a little milder than we'd like to see, at least into the low to mid 20s into the central Corn Belt areas. And that looks about right. Maybe some frost and freeze potential in the winter wheat fields, and the north end of cotton country could be down into the low to mid 30s at some point over the weekend. moving out early next week. Next 6 to 10 days, this is a little more at least ideal, improved to get some shower activity into the plain states. Milder, more typical, more long-lasting spring weather expected across a bunch of the plains and Corn Belt locales. So again, not a dynamic feature or two, just little disturbances may ultimately set up a boundary somewhere over the central plains or central Corn Belt, and that should help to begin to at least focus organized rains going forward. Otherwise, the warmth over the western states and kind of building back northward as well with time. And the precip pattern is generally the right idea. This is really broad brush strokes, he tries to say, over the middle part of the country, but the right idea, a more showery weather picture getting going. But again, fighting dry grounds, dry-ridden environs across the plains and Corn Belt locales. Next live stream is on the 22nd of April. Maybe we'll have a few additional thoughts going forward as it applies to summertime. Read some of the social media stuff and some of the technical stuff that's really on board with. They follow meteorology, they know what they're doing, and I can kind of begin to understand and see where we're thinking about maybe the strength of a stronger El Nino. I think a super El Nino is a little overboard, trying to get hits and clicks and all that, but the right idea that we have to keep an eye on is going forward into summertime and beyond across the middle part of the country.
Very good. Yeah, we'll be checking in then. Put that on your calendar, the 22nd at 1 p.m. Central. But we'll be checking in with Greg prior to that every week. Every week, at least once a week. This week's once a week. Next week, twice a week. We're going to be checking in just to get those updates as well. So,
we have that 4-week forecast on This Week in Agribusiness. So got it coming in all directions.
Yep, wherever you need some weather, we got it for you. So, well, Greg, have a great week there on your vacation, and we'll touch base with you next week. Thank you, and thank you all for joining us as well.